Hello everyone, welcome back. So in this current session we are going to discuss about the implementation of k-means with the help of sklearn. Okay, so sklearn functionalities will use and we implement k-means. So we have already discussed about k-means classifier in a separate session, and we are also now familiar with the digis dataset from sklearn again, and we have just used that data set, and we have done some standardization on the data set as well. So our data set is ready, and in this session we are going to use that data set with the k-means classifier. So this is the module I'm going to use, and it takes many parameters. Okay, I will discuss few of them here. So first one is the n clusters. So it is integer and the default value is 8. It is the number of clusters to form. So when I have data, that is actually the value of k that we have already discussed as part of theory. So we have to decide on the number of clusters, and we have to put in this parameter value. Then there is another parameter called init. Init is the method for initialization, means how this initialization will work, means how the clusters will be formed and how the centroids will be calculated. So these are the few methods. So default value is k means plus plus, and these are some of the other things that you can also pass here. For details you can always refer the sklearn documentation. Okay, then comes n init. It is also one integer and it is default value is 10. It is the number of time the k-means algorithm will be run with different centroid sets. So it's like means, as you know, that in the theory session we have explained that as we change the centroid value, we again calculate the distances and we change the classes for different instances. So how many times I am going to do that? So that is one value that I can initiate here, and the default value is 10. Okay, then comes this algorithm. Then it also has some values, and the default is auto. It is the actual k-means algorithm that is being used. Okay, and for most of the cases we'll use the default parameters unless we have some specific requirement. Okay, and if we have to get very detailed knowledge about the parameters, that we have to refer the documentation contains all the details, but most of the cases we can go for the default arguments. Most of the time it is more or less, will give you sufficient result. Fine. Okay, then comes few of the attributes of this module. So it has these attributes. First one is cluster centers. Okay, this is nd array of shape n clusters and n features. So in our case, suppose we have number of clusters is 10 and number of features is 64. So it will be something 10 by 64. The size of the nd array will be 10 by 64. So it actually gives you, for all the 10 clusters, it gives you the coordinates of the cluster centers. Okay, so as you know that as we define the number of clusters, we have to define some centroid also, and these details will give you the exact all the possible coordinates. So you can think of, if there are only two feature values, then it will be the x and y coordinate values for that particular centroid. Okay, and as the dimensions are increasing, then the number of values in the coordinates will increase. Okay, then comes labels. So what is that? It is also nd array of shape n samples. So it's like the final labels for that. So for n samples, the n number of labels will be present. So labels for each point, it will be the number of samples, actually the predicted target. You can say that this particular sample, where it belongs to, in which class it is now. Okay, then comes the inertia. So inertia we have already discussed as part of theory. So it returns some floating point value, and it is the sum of squared distances of samples to their closest cluster center. So that is the inertia value. And then this is n iter. So this is integer, and this is the number of iterations run. So I told you that the entire thing, that selection of clusters and selection of this selection of the centroids and then changing it again and again. So I can have multiple number of iterations to do this thing. So here you will see that how many number of times these iterations were run. Okay. Then there are few methods that also will use for k-means. These are the predict and fit method. You know that we use it very frequently for most of the modules. That predict method, it is the predict the closest cluster each sample in X belongs to, means you have to give this X as input and it will give you the closest cluster. Means if there are set of samples, if you send to this predict method, so first anyway you have to do fit. So when you fit with some data, it computes k-means clustering, and then when you give some sample, then it will predict that in which class it can belong to. Okay, fine. So matrix I will come later. Let us go back to Jupyter Notebook. Okay. So the first thing is I am importing k-means from sklearn.cluster. Then this estimator I am defining as I am calling this k-means, and here I have sent these parameter values. N clusters equal to n digits. If you remember, n digits is 10, so I want 10 number of clusters to be created. Then this init equal to k-means plus plus, that is the default value anyway. Then n init equal to 10, so I want that it should be the 10 initiation. So you can just go back here. I can show you this n init is the number of time the k-means algorithm will be run with different centroids. So that the default value is anyway 10, and we have mentioned it as 10 only. Fine. So let us just execute it. So it is executed. Now what I am doing, I am doing this, I am calling this fit method, and I am sending data as the input. If you remember that we had taken the feature set from digits data set, and then we had done some standardization on this using the scale method. So that is how the data is now looking like, and I am fitting this data in this estimator. Okay, so now if I can print the attributes of estimator, right? We have discussed about attributes. So these are the levels. So levels will be from 0 to 9, and then comes the inertia. This is the total distance that we calculate for each sample, and then this is the n iter. This is the number of iterations was run was 31. Okay, and then this is another parameter, this another attribute, sorry. So if you execute this, so these are the cluster centers. So you know that it will be something 10 by 64 matrix kind of data, so you are getting it here. Okay, fine. So that's how I got this output for this. So I have executed this k-means algorithm on this data set, and I got this type of output. So k-means was run. Fine. Then comes this. Okay, so then comes this matrix. So matrix is something, this module actually is very important. We have already used it in some places, so let us have some discussion and some familiarity with this module as well, because this module includes score functions, performance metrics, and means different metrics. Actually it gives you that how the function is performing, how the predicted output is close to your actual output, this type of score, different types of score it gets. So it's very important that whenever we are running some algorithm, then we can check how accurate it is, or how good it is performing through this matrix module. So there are three different scores that we are going to discuss here. First one is the homogeneity score. So a clustering result satisfied homogeneity. What does that mean? That if all its clusters contain only data points which are member of a single class, means here we are actually what it checks, that it takes any cluster and it takes all the data points or all the samples present in that particular cluster and sees that whether they are similar or not, means whether they should be together or not. So that score is actually homogeneity score. And there is another in the different angle when it is calculated, it's called completeness score. So here how it is calculated, that if all the data points that are members of a given class are elements of the same cluster. So here it is just seeing it in a different way, that all the data points that are members. So in the homogeneity score you are calculating that um, for a particular cluster you are seeing, and now you are seeing in point of view of the samples, that for each element of the class you are checking that they are belonging to the same cluster or not. Okay, so it's kind of very similar, but it's just the opposite way. So in homogeneity you are taking one cluster and checking its samples, and in completeness you are taking the data points and checking that how means whether it belongs to the same and correct cluster or not. Okay, that's how these different scores are calculated. You can only just print those scores and you can check that, you can understand that as the score goes close to 1, then it's always better, and when it is not much close to 1, then you can understand it's not going very close. Okay, so that's how you can just check the score and you can understand that how good your algorithm is performing. Fine. And then the Shillard score, so that you know that we have already discussed. So it is the mean Shiller's coefficient of all the samples. You know that the Shiller score is being calculated for each sample one at a time. So it's like the mean value of the samples I have taken, and the best value of this is 1 and worst value is -1, that we have discussed in the theory session. So let us go back to Jupyter Notebook again. So here I am importing this matrix. Okay, so after I have imported, I am just printing this. So homogeneity score, you can see that I have sent the levels and the estimator levels. So levels are the actual values, actual outcomes, and this estimator dot levels underscore, these are actually the predicted outcomes that we have got. Now this comparison is being done, and for this completeness score also I am sending levels and estimator levels, and for this Shillard score I am sending data means the input set of data, and then estimator dot levels means the levels that I got from this output, and then this metric equal to Euclidean. You know that it actually calculates distance. So here Euclidean distance is being calculated. Euclidean distance we have discussed earlier in our earlier sessions. And then there is another important thing, that is sample size. So here I have sent sample size equal to sample size. So what is this sample size? If you remember, in the last session we had set sample size as 300. So actually there are total 1797 records, but here I don't want to calculate the score for the entire data set. Actually I am taking only 300 records, because you understand that this calculation will be huge for 1797. So I have just taken a sample of 300 and I am just trying to calculate this Shiller score. So let us execute this. So you can see that these two scores are 0.6 and 0.65, so they are not much bad. So it's like more than 50% kind of, so they are close to 1. And this Shiller score, anyway we have taken only for 300 samples and it is 0.13. so if it is moving to 1 it is good, and when it is moving to -1 it's not good. So this kind of calculation, it all depends on the size also. So I have taken this sample size and I am getting this value. That way you can always calculate the Shiller score and other scores as well. Okay, in the next step what I am doing now, I want some graphical representation. I want to graphically represent that how the data was actually classified, and you know, as there are so many features, then it will be so many dimensions, it's difficult to plot. So my plan is that I will take only 2 features. Okay, and then it will be easy for me to plot it, and for taking 2 features, then PCA is dimensionality reduction technique that we have already learned. So we'll use this PCA and we'll take 2 principal components. Okay, so here you can see I have imported PCA, then I am taking reduced data as I'm calling PCA, and I'm taking this n components as 2. So I will only generate first two principal components, those are the best ones, and then I'm calling this feed transform data. So I'm just putting data as input, and I will calculate the base two components, the first two principal components from this 64 feature set. Okay, then with this data I will call k-means again with this init, n cluster and n init, all the default values, and only here n cluster is equal to n digits. That's the important parameter that I have to set. And then I am fitting this reduced data with k-means. Okay, so there are two steps. First I am doing PCA with number of components as 2. So I will generate only two principal components, and then I will set that data set with those two principal components. I will now I will implement k-means on that. Okay, so let us execute. So k-means was executed, the fit method was called. Then if you just check this, so you can understand this reduced data, it has 1797 records and only 2 columns instead of 64. Now it is reduced to 2. So I have done some dimensionality reduction. Okay, next I am calling matplotlib. Okay, I am importing this library, and then okay, there are few things here I will explain, don't worry. So I have written h equal to 0.2. so what is this h, I will tell you. And then I have calculated x mean and x max. So what are those x mean and x max? So reduced data, you know, this 1797 records having two principal components as the columns. So what I am doing here, I am taking the reduced data, then I am taking the first column of all the records, and I am calculating the minimum value of the same. So I am taking the first column of all the records, I am taking the minimum value of this, and I am doing some -1 from that. So first I calculate the minimum value for the first column, and I just subtract 1 from that. That I store in x mean, and then again I am calculating the maximum value of the first column and adding 1. So suppose if the minimum value is 5, then x mean will be 4, and if the maximum value is 10, then the x max will be 11. Similar way I am doing this for the second column, and I am calculating the minimum value and subtracting 1 from it. I am calculating the maximum value, adding 1 to it, and storing it y mean and y max. Okay, so I have now created 4 variables. And then there is another thing I am doing here. I am sending this x mean, x max and h to np.arrange method. You know that when I am sending this, then it will actually create one array where the range will be from x mean to x max. So it will be the starting value, it will be the ending value, and this h will be the frequency. Means suppose if I am sending x mean equal to 1, x max equal to 10, and h equal to 2, that means the values in the array will be something 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Okay, you can try it with some values, then it will be more clear to you. And in this np.meshgrid method, I am sending these two arrays. So this statement creates one array which starts from x mean, ends in x max, and the difference of value between these elements is h. Similar way I am creating another array with y mean and y max, where also the difference between the values will be h, and these two arrays are sent to this meshgrid method. Okay, how it works, what it is, the purpose of it, I will tell you. Let us first execute it. Okay, so for more clearance that how this is working, so here what I have done, I have called these methods and stored these arrays in a1 and a2. I will print the shape of these arrays and the second element of this array. Okay, so let us execute. Okay, so you can see that the shape of a1 is 949 and the shape of a2 is 927. So when it has calculated this x mean, x max, y mean, y max, and this difference of 0.2, then this type of these many elements were created. So that was the difference between x max and x mean, and with the frequency h. So these many elements are created in these arrays, and these are the second element of a1 and a2. Okay, you can print individually these four elements also. You can see the how the values are looking like. Okay, but so you understood that how np arrange is working with these values. Okay, better I can print this way also. Let us print. If you print like that, let us see. So you can see these 5 values I have printed, and they have the difference of 0.02. Just check the values. The values have differences of 0.02. Okay, now we need to understand what is mesh grid. So I will go back to presentation again. Okay, so this is numpy.meshgrid. What it does, it makes some n dimensional coordinate arrays for vectorized evolutions of n dimensional scalar or vector fields over n dimensional grid. So it's like I am sending it two arrays, right? So it will be like a two-dimensional coordinate arrays it will create, and it's kind of this type of graph. If you have seen some graph paper where we have drawn some graphs in mathematics maybe, so it's kind of this. So it's kind of like it is combination of coordinate values it is returning. Okay, so I had, if you remember, that x means and x max, suppose. Okay, x min minus 1 and x max plus 1, and then I had the difference of 0.2. So that's how different values of x was calculated. Similar way, different values of y were calculated, these many values, and it returns the coordinate of each point. So for every point there is a value of x and y, so that's how it is returning me all the possible values of this grid. Okay, so that's how this mesh grid functionality works. So if I go back now, you can see that so it returned me xx comma yy. Okay, so what is that, how it is looking like if you just execute this. So you can see that what is the shape of xx, it is 927 by 949, and yy also 927 by 949. So it's actually nothing but the collection of all these values. Okay, so it is just combining those values of all the possible x values and all the possible y values, and it is returning you the coordinates of this graph. The graph we can come back here again. So it is like all the combination of x and y values possible for this graph if you return somewhere. So that's how this mesh grid is created. Okay, so I have printed some values also. You can see, you can try different values. Okay, fine. Now what I am doing, okay, there is another functionality I need to tell you, that suppose xx. So if you print, you know that it's kind of an array. Okay, now if you just check what is xx dot ravel, so you can see that this was a kind of two-dimensional array, and it has just reduced the dimension and it has made it very simple. Okay, flattened. So if you see that, okay, I will come back later. So if you see that xx dot ravel, it does nothing but it just flatten the entire array. Okay, whatever may be the dimension, it just flatten it only a kind of list of values. So that is how this works, xx dot ravel. And I am calling this np dot c underscore as well. Okay, all these things you just try to be familiar. It's not like that all these ravel and mesh grid, those things are only being done to give you some good graphical representation that how k-mean works. So you need not be very familiar with all this, at least now. You just have a look, and gradually you can read more, and you can be more confident on these things, but at least you should know that what is the functionality of these different components. Okay, so this now you can see that xx dot ravel means is, you can just assume that it's a collection of values. Okay, just like a list of values, single dimensional list of values. similar way this, and I'm sending this to this np.c functionality. So what is np.c? It translates slice objects to concatenation along the second axis. It actually creates some two-dimensional array with the input set of values it got. Okay, so suppose you send one list of values 1 2 3 4 5, another list has 6 7 8 9 10. So if this 5 values you are sending, so it will create some arrays like 1 6 2 7 3 8 4 9 5 10, like that. So it will just combine, and it will be minimum two-dimensional array, and if there are more values, then it will just concatenate along the second axis. Okay, here we have sent two list of values, so it will actually, what it will do, that it will combine them and create some, some kind of coordinates, set of coordinates it will create. So if you just check, if I print, then you can see, suppose if I print this, so you can see now. So this xx.ravel returns some list of flat set of values, yy.ravel returns some set of values only, and when I am calling it np.c underscore, then it will give you an array kind of two values combined. Okay, these two values, like that. Okay, it is just some, the purpose is nothing but to take all the values uh, from this grid maybe. Okay, it's just combining these two values in a proper way, just like that. Suppose this graph, so you can always represent, how do you represent, suppose for this point, it may be, suppose 8,6, right? So that way we can have any point of this graph we can represent with a x comma y value. So it's just doing that. All these things we have done so far. This first of all we have created mesh grid, and then we have done some ravel and c underscore. So all these things are just to get some all the values in a form x comma y. So we now got it. Okay, with np.c underscore. So now I am sending this in the k-means.predict method. So I have already fitted that record. You will remember that data is fitted. Now I am just sending the same things. This reduced data I have fitted. If you remember, yes, I have done this k-means.fit the same way. The fit is already run. So predict means I am sending a new set of samples, and based on the data set I have fitted, it will just put them in different classes. So now already 10 classes are defined. So it will now take all these coordinate values, set of x and x comma y values, and it will put in appropriate classes of this entire 10 classes. Okay, so that's what I want to do. So I'll just k-means.predict method I am calling, and as argument I am sending this, this x comma y's kind of set of values. As you can see here, this type of value sets is being sent to this k-means.predict. Okay, then I can print this. So let us execute. So this is z, this is getting printed. Okay, so now z is what, for all the coordinate values it will give some output is like from 0 to 9, any value from 0 to 9. So it will take all the coordinate values and it will place in different clusters. And then this is the shape of xx. The shape of xx was this, and shape of z is this. Z is nothing but 927 into 949. Okay, so for all coordinate values it has generated some outcome. That's why the shape is this for z. This is the shape of z, and this is the shape of xx. Okay, now here I had printed xx and ravel and np.c. Now what I am doing, I am just changing the shape of z. So instead of this shape, I want to put it in a shape like this. Okay, so here I am doing the reshape. Okay, so I have done the reshape now. So the z values are now in a two-dimensional array kind of status. Okay, now I am calling this imshow method. So let us first execute this, then I will explain. Okay, now you get something visible. Okay, so how it is drawn. here as data set I have sent z. Okay, interpolation is some kind of logical implementation where it is taking the nearest values and putting in the clusters. Okay, then there is the extent. So extent is like from where to where this graph will be drawn. So it is from x mean to x max, x mean to x max, and y mean to y max. And then C map is the color map, this how this color will be plotted. You can have some detailed information on it if you go to the documentation of this. And then there is the aspect, means how this picture will be drawn, these parameters. Okay, this I have sent it as auto only, so it will do according to the data it has. And there is the origin. This is somehow important because this origin can be lower or upper. So if I put it lower, then 0 0 value means the 0 0 coordinate point will be placed in the lower end, and if I mention it as upper, then it will be just the opposite side of the picture. Okay, and I will go back to the slide. And okay, here there is some information about IMShow, that it display data as an image. Okay, X the image data, that is the Z that we have sent. CMap is the color map instance or name to map scalar data to color. So it is just converting the data in form of color actually. Extent is that the bounding box that I told you that we have done it for x mean to x max and y mean to y max. Then aspect, it controls the aspect ratio of the axis. Okay, that how this data will be formed. And then origin, place the 0 0 index of the array in the upper left or lower left corner. So you can just check that. If I just change this lower, so as I told you that we need not always bother about all the parameters, but if you know that which ones are important for us, then we can just make the appropriate values of them. Others we can keep as it is. So you can see that how it is changed. So you can change it your way and see. Okay, so by default I will keep it as lower. Okay, so now what I am doing, okay, so that is only the IMShow I have called. And next what I am doing, after this IMShow, I am doing this, I am calling this plt.plot method with reduce data 0 and 1. Okay, so let us put it in differential. I will just show you how it works, only this. So with IMShow I will add this plot as well. So now you can see many black dots. So what are those? Those are actually the principal components that we have generated for all the 1797 records. So this 0 and 1, so all these values I have plotted here. So now you can see this black dots. So as there are different colors, so you can see that actually there are 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10, so total 10 clusters are there, and these points are together. So you can see that most of the cases they are together, so we can say that they are put in right cluster maybe in most of the cases. Okay, and then what I am doing, then this centroids, you remember that this cluster centers, it returns you the coordinates of all the centroids. I mean, in this case, as there are 10 clusters, so there will be 10 centroids, and as there are two features, means we had generated two principal components, so there will be something 10 by 2 matrix. So this centroid will be something 10 by 2 matrix. So if you see here, if I run, so you can see kind of 10 by 2 matrix. So what I am doing now, I am plotting this coordinates, means these 10 values I want to place in the scatter plot. Okay, I am trying to do this scatter plot. So centroids 0 and 1, so 0 means these values, 1 means these values, and then marker equal to x means how they will be plotted. The the it will be drawn like a X, okay. And this line width is 3, color is W, W means is white, okay. What is Z order, I will come later. So let us see how it works. So I will just copy this part also, and I will print, add it here. So everything I am now one together. So first one is the all the coordinate values we had generated from mesh grid, that we have plotted in 10 different clusters. Then we have plotted all the reduced data features, so now they are plotted in different colorful clusters, and then I am taking the centers and I want to plot them as well. So now if you can see now that there are some this cross, white crosses, so they are actually the centroids for this cluster. So if this is one cluster, these are all the members of the clusters, and this is the centroid. So it has taken the x and y axis values, and you have, it has just placed this, okay. And there is one argument called Z order. You can see I have put it as there are 3 types of things are together, right. First one is this I am show this thing, and then I have plotted this these points and this crosses. So how they will behave means who will be prominent over whom, if I want to have some want to give them some priority kind of thing. So that's why you can see that first one I have given in the I am show it's fine. So this Z order is 10 for these black ones, and Z order is 20 for these white ones. So you can just check the orders and you can see that how it behaves, but you should have some difference of at least 5 to 10, okay, otherwise you cannot understand. So you can keep some order here. So here from the order you understand that I want to prioritize this white one. So when they are black and white together, then white should be more prominent, that's what I want. So you can see all the white points. So these are the 10 clusters, these are the 10 centroids, and these are actually data points which are in different clusters. So through k-means I have just created these 10 clusters, I have created the centroids, and then I have put this data in different clusters. Now I can say that if particular this point, then I can say okay, this point is in this cluster and this is the centroid for this particular cluster. So this way this k-means works, and through this graph we have shown that how these clusters are formed, and how the centroids look like, and how the data is divided in these different clusters. So that's how this algorithm works. Hope you understood, and for all the details of these different modules, I have tried to give you some overview, but if you want more detailed information, then it is advised that you should go to the Python documentations, and it contains very much more and more details about each of the modules, so you can gain more knowledge on it. So I hope that this k-means algorithm implementation was quite clear to you, and it is understandable, it is interesting. So we are done now with k-means implementation, and in the next session we will go with some different machine learning algorithm. So for now, thank you.